What was supposed to be a happy day for a mother-to-be seeing her baby on a sonar for the first time turned into a tragedy just hours later when she mysteriously disappeared in Denver, Colorado. 21-year-old Kelsie Schelling was a vibrant and bubbly person who others naturally gravitated towards. Her friend and co-worker Allie Cox said, "There was nothing quiet about Kelsie whatsoever. She was fun, she was great with people, really personable." But Kelsie had also struggled in the past with her mental health. After her parents divorced when she was a teenager, Kelsie found herself in the depths of despair, and she tried to end her own life. 2 years before she disappeared, she tried again. Kelsie called Allie and said, I need help. I need you to come home and I need help." Allie rushed her friend to the hospital after she admitted to taking too many pills. At the age of 21, Kelsie unexpectedly got pregnant. Her parents, Doug Schelling and Laura Saxton, were ready to rally around and support their daughter. On the day Kelsie disappeared, she had her first glimpse of her daughter-to-be on a sonogram. She was 8 weeks pregnant. On the night of February 4th, 2013, just after clocking out of work at 9:54 p.m., Kelsie disappeared. The investigators had to consider the possibility that she may have tried to take her own life because of her past struggles, but they quickly dismissed that thought after her family noted her strong love for her unborn baby. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation agent Kevin Torres said, "That is a hard avenue to explore, and just like millions of other Americans, I think she had some mental health issues, and she battled them and was winning that battle." Her mother, Laura, recalled the last conversation she had with her daughter. "I talked to her and told her I would support her any way I could. The whole family would support her and it was going to be okay." Kelsie's family and the investigators went to her apartment, where they found nothing out of the ordinary, which led them to believe she had likely met with foul play. Laura reached out to Kelsie's on-again, off-again boyfriend and the unborn baby's father, Dante Lucas, a former college basketball star. Kelsie and Dante met at Northeastern Junior College in 2010. They dated on and off while there, and after 2 years, they both decided to leave the school. He admitted to seeing Kelsie that night at around 2 or 3 a.m., but told Laura that she seemed fine when they parted ways. He promised to reach out to the family if Kelsie tried to contact him, and mentioned that she may have gone to California. Kelsie had moved out to California the year before and loved the sunny beaches and friends she made there, but she was forced to return to Colorado just 6 months later when she was unable to keep up with the high cost of living in the Golden State. The investigators looked into the possibility that Kelsie had jetted over to California for a visit, but they did not find any evidence to suggest that is where she had gone. As time went by, the investigators uncovered clues. Allie told the investigator that about 6 months before Kelsie's disappearance, Kelsie failed to show up for a shift at work. When her colleagues finally got in touch with her, she told them she could not come in because she had bruises on her neck and claimed that her father had strangled her. Kelsie's father, Doug, denied ever harming his daughter, and the detectives were ultimately able to confirm that he had been hours away at the time of the alleged incident, but that left them wondering who had actually caused the bruising. About a week after Kelsie vanished, the authorities got their first break in the case. Kelsie's car was spotted on surveillance video at around noon the day after she disappeared, driving into a Walmart parking lot in Pueblo, Colorado, a town about 2 hours south of Denver. It was the same town where Dante was living with his grandmother. An unidentified male was seen getting out of the car and walking around the building, where he was picked up by another vehicle. The next morning, the same man was seen getting back into Kelsie's car and driving away. 8 days after Kelsie's car drove out of the Walmart parking lot, it was later found sitting abandoned in a hospital parking lot. There was no evidence that Kelsie ever went inside the hospital. Again, surveillance footage showed an unidentified man driving the car into the lot. Laura, Kelsie's mom, said, "The day that her car was found, that was the day I knew that she was deceased, because I knew there was no way. She was very attached to her things, and I just knew that there was no way that she would abandon her car." The investigators also learned that the day after Kelsie disappeared, someone had used an ATM in Pueblo to withdraw $400 from Kelsie's bank account. When they looked at the surveillance footage captured at the ATM, they recognized a familiar face. Dante was the one who withdrew the money. He had also been driving her car at the time. The Pueblo police arrested him for identity theft and brought him in for questioning. His story about what happened the night Kelsie disappeared kept changing. While sometimes he told police he had met up with her at around 2 a.m., other times he placed it closer to midnight. He also told them that they stayed at the Walmart, went to his grandma's house, and in one account, that they went to a hospital and she lost the baby there. The conflicting stories were not enough, however, to arrest Dante for Kelsie's disappearance. And after investigators found evidence that Kelsie had often lent Dante her bank card and vehicle in the past, they were not able to hold him on the identity theft charges either, and he was released. Without any concrete evidence, years went by without any arrests in Kelsie's disappearance. Kelsie's brother, Colby Schelling, said of the family's anguish, "I think we were all lost, almost like your heart falls into the pit of your stomach, and you feel just so helpless." 4 years after Kelsie disappeared, the CBI decided to take a fresh look at the case. They considered different possibilities, but continued to come back to Dante. Kelsie loved Dante with all her heart, unconditionally, but Kelsie would often confide in her friends that Dante did not feel the same way about her, and he was very degrading to her. One friend had reported that Kelsie said Dante had gotten violent in the past, pushing her when he got upset. According to Agent Torres, the relationship between Kelsie and Dante met all the markers of a very tumultuous relationship with the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Dante's ex-girlfriend also told the investigators that he got anxious every time Kelsie's case came on the news and admitted being the man captured on the surveillance footage dropping her car off. A break in the case finally came when Agent Torres was finally able to secure a warrant for Dante's cell phone at the time, which revealed the final text messages between him and Kelsie. According to the text messages, Kelsie had driven to Pueblo the night she disappeared, arriving at the Walmart parking lot at 11:20 p.m. Dante told her that he would be over there shortly, but she waited for more than an hour for him to arrive. Kelsie eventually pulled onto a street near Dante's grandmother's home, and then sent one final text message at 12:32 p.m. that read, "Where are you? I have been here over an hour just waiting." That was the last text message. Agent Torres believes Dante finally arrived and ushered Kelsie into his grandmother's house. He believes a fight broke out about the baby, and that was when Dante took Kelsie's life. Laura said, "He's a monster. I mean, it is bad enough that he wanted to get rid of Kelsie, rather than just walking away from her, but that he wanted to end his child." The authorities finally had enough evidence to arrest Dante Lucas in the case, and he was charged in the first degree in 2017. Lucas went on trial 4 years later and was found guilty in March of 2021. Lucas was sentenced to life without parole and is currently serving out his sentence at the Lyman Correctional Facility in Lincoln County, Colorado. He appealed his conviction, but it was upheld by the Colorado Court of Appeals in 2024. Kelsie's body has never been found. Laura said, "I'm never going to recover without getting her back. I still have nowhere to go to take her flowers, to go sit and talk with her, take her balloons on her birthday, go to her on the holidays. I have nothing. Dante took that away from me." In 1998, a mother vanished without a trace with her young toddler while she was about 9 months pregnant with her third child. 23 years after their disappearance, the family finally has some answers about what happened to them. On September 11, 1998, 19-year-old Samantha Hopper, an almost mother of 3, came home from work in Russellville, Arkansas, and asked her mother if she could look after her daughters while she and a friend went to a concert in Little Rock, Arkansas. Her mom, Debbie, said she could only look after one of them, so she took the eldest, 3-year-old Desiree. Samantha said that she would take her 22-month-old daughter, Courtney Holt, to her father and told her mother that she would be back the following day. Samantha's friend later said that there was no concert, and the real story is that Samantha had a boyfriend in West Memphis that her mom did not approve of. After pregnant, Samantha dropped Desiree off at her mother's home she left in her blue 1989 Ford Tempo with Courtney. They were never heard from again. Samantha and Courtney were reported missing that same day. However, Samantha, her daughter, and her blue Ford Tempo were never located. 23 years later, a nonprofit group called Adventures with Purpose, whose members traveled the U.S. working on cold cases, started looking into the case of Samantha and her young daughter. Dive teams from the group split up to span multiple locations in the area of Lake Dardanelle, with the group taking a route along Mill Creek, sending divers into the Illinois Bayou near Pleasant View Road. A target was identified on sonar under the West Pleasant View Road Bridge on October 26, 2021, in 8 feet of water. The dive team found a blue Ford Tempo that matched Samantha's car. Her car did not have a license plate, as it was a new car when Samantha drove it that day in 1998. They also discovered human remains inside the car. Along with the human remains, a car seat was found in the back of the vehicle when it was hoisted out of the water, but it was not immediately obvious if her daughter's remains were also inside the car. The remains were sent to the Arkansas State Crime Lab in Little Rock for DNA testing in the hope of obtaining a positive identification using DNA from Debbie and Desiree. The family was at the scene when the car was brought up. Chaos Divers Post read, "While it was gut-wrenching to have to see the tears stream down their faces as they were told the news, it was also incredibly heartwarming to see the smiles on their faces and the weight released from their shoulders, knowing they were potentially bringing their loved ones home." The Pope County Sheriff's Office said in a statement that they would like to send their sincere condolences to the family of Samantha Hopper and Courtney Holt, and they are thankful to have been a small part of helping bring this 23-year-old case to closure. Samantha's daughter, Desiree, wrote on a memorial page that the discovery of their remains was a relief. The vehicle had ended up in the water after going over a bridge. In a statement, Adventures with Purpose added, "Samantha and her 2 babies have now been brought home." Advances in DNA technology and genealogy helped solve the case of an unknown teenage hitchhiker 60 years after he lost his life. On March 27, 1961, a blue-eyed hitchhiker with olive skin was picked up by a driver. The driver of the car crashed through the rail of a bridge and plunged into the Cahaba River in Bibb County, Alabama. Sadly, the young hitchhiker did not survive the crash, but the driver of the car did. The driver shared a few details about the boy. However, it was not enough to identify him. The 2 travelers had not even exchanged names before the crash happened. All that was known of the boy was that his parents had divorced when he was young, and life with his mom and stepfather was difficult. He had been hitchhiking through Alabama, possibly en route to California. The boy's remains were recovered from the river, but the authorities did not know who he was or if anyone was looking for him. The young man, who stood at about 5 feet 6 inches, had few identifying characteristics. He had light brown hair, blue eyes, and a self-inked tattoo on his left arm that appeared to read "RY in love" or R+Y in love. He had a miraculous medal of the Immaculate Conception tied around his neck with cotton twine. He wore a Timex watch, and along with a suitcase full of clothes, carried a pack of Pall Mall cigarettes with a South Carolina tax stamp on it, indicating he may have traveled some distance to end up in Alabama. About 2 weeks after the crash, after all the effort to identify the boy has been exhausted, he was buried at the Centerville Memorial Cemetery in Bibb County under a white marble headstone that read, "Unknown in life but recognized in demise." Funds for his burial was raised by the community. For years, sleuths kept on the trail. An independent agency called Identifinders International discovered that the boy had likely hitched rides with at least 3 drivers during the fateful journey. Some believed he had been put up by relatives in South Carolina and Montevallo, Alabama, where he attempted to find work. Others speculated he intended to enlist in the military, or may have been a wayward prison inmate. The case went cold for 55 years before Bibb County officials were contacted, in 2016, by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The organization informed them that funds had been allocated to exhume the body in hopes that modern genetic testing might finally solve the mystery. His remains were then taken to the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences in Montgomery, where they obtained bone fragments and teeth and sent them off for DNA profiling at the University of North Texas. Researchers built a mitochondrial DNA profile and uploaded it into the combined DNA index system, but no matches to missing persons were made. The case again went dormant. For nearly 4 more years, no leads were uncovered until independent detective Colleen Fitzpatrick, an investigator with Identifinders International, contacted the newly elected Coroner West in October 2020. Fitzpatrick said that her group was determined to close the book on what they have declared is the oldest case of a missing child to ever be solved with DNA forensics. The money to embark on the inquiry had been raised predominantly by viewers of a YouTube channel, Gray Hughes Investigates, who had set up a forensic genealogy fund for use by Identifinders. West said, "They did extensive work there to extract DNA. They had a lot of complications, but they did not give up. They agreed on a new approach to DNA analysis where parts of the body were sent to another lab in California, where finally they learned who he was. 15-year-old Daniel Paul Danny Armantrout, who was born on December 28, 1945 in Miami. Then began the work of tracking down any family of Danny. His parents were identified as Alfred Valentine Armantrout and Virginia Leo Katie Berner. In 2021, a brother named Don Hamilton, who was 77 and lives in Florida, was tracked down. He had been in the Army when Danny ran away and was not able to track down his younger brother when he returned home. Their eldest brother, David, had also run away. According to Don, they grew up in a severely abusive household. Their alcoholic stepfather whipped their bare backs with a belt and burned their fingers with matches. The brothers went weekends at a time without food. Their mother told them she wished they had never been born. Don escaped as soon as he could, joining the Army at age 17. Despite his childhood, Don made a good life for himself. He had a 30-year career in the Army, retiring in 1989 as a sergeant major. He met his wife while stationed in Germany, fell in love, and has been married for more than 40 years. He has 2 daughters and 8 grandchildren. As a high school dropout, he earned an associate's degree in business management in the 1990s and was a nutrition coordinator for many years. But not a day has gone by that he did not wonder what had become of his 2 brothers. David remains missing to surviving family. He was 2 years older than Don. Danny's father passed away in 1973. His mother passed away in 2011. Don was very emotional to learn the truth about Danny. He wants to come up and have a memorial service and meet some of the people who worked behind the scenes to locate his brother. The last time he saw Danny was when he was home from military service for a couple of weeks during Christmas break in 1960, shortly before Danny ran away. The 2 brothers went into the mountains by their rural home in Tennessee to go squirrel shooting, which was one of their favorite and only activities as they were very poor. There was no TV or phone and few other kids around. Danny did not say anything to him about running away, but he knew Danny made the same calculation their older brother had already made. They could stick around and take the abuse or try life on their own. Don said, "It was not much of a choice." Identifinders International hopes to locate his still missing eldest brother. Danny's anonymous grave will be amended to include his full name. Don said, "I am sad because I will never get to see my brother alive. My heart feels good. I am going to be able to bless his grave site." Coroner West said, "It is really amazing. I cannot express enough how grateful I am, as well as many others, to finally be able to put his name on his headstone. Thank you all for the ones that never gave up on him." A man responsible for kidnapping a woman and using her as a slave has finally been convicted 25 years after the crime took place, thanks to DNA linking him to the case. On June 8, 1996, a young woman named Michelle Shepard was kidnapped and indecently assaulted by a man in Wilmington, North Carolina. After the attack, she went to the hospital and then the police station. Unfortunately, no arrests were made and the case eventually went cold. Michelle, a mother of 2, had to wait 26 years before she received the justice she deserved for the horrible act that was committed against her. During the COVID pandemic, the Wilmington Police Department came across a long-neglected assault kit. Attached was paperwork identifying Timothy Iannone as a suspect that had never been digitized and put online. For years, there had been no funding to test backlogged kits, but a 2019 initiative by North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein provided $6 million across the state. District Attorney Ben David said that funding made it possible for the Wilmington Police Department to test the kit. WPD assigned a detective, located Michelle, living in Raleigh, and eventually made an arrest in November 2021. The case was anything but easy. After 26 years, evidence, everything from recollections to DNA, had deteriorated. In fact, District Attorney David said that it was the first time this particular type of DNA evidence, based on the Y chromosome, had been used in New Hanover Court, and Iannone's defense, led by public defender Trip Watson, a former prosecutor and Superior Court judge, was afforded considerable resources. They hired investigators, worked non-stop for 2 weeks, and, in David's estimation, made this a heavyweight fight. Iannone was charged with first-degree assault and kidnapping after being apprehended by the U.S. Marshals Carolinas Regional Fugitive Task Force. Iannone, a former Port City cab driver, was also a prime suspect in 2 other cases that the WPD has been working on for more than a decade. The cases of Allison Jackson Foy and Angela Rothen. The bodies of Allison and Angela were found in some woods off Carolina Beach Road in April 2008. To date, no arrests have been made in either of these 2 cases, as there has not been enough evidence to charge Iannone. On December 9, 2022, 3 weeks into the trial, District Attorney Ben David brought forth 2 forensic scientists to link Iannone to Michelle's case. The jury deliberated a little over an hour before returning its verdict. At the trial, Michelle spoke publicly about the pain she suffered at the hands of Iannone. She hopes his sentencing will be enough to help those too scared to come forward to do just that. She said, "I just want everybody to see that even after 26 years, it is so important that you stand up for yourself and for you to speak out for yourself, because they, the district attorney and police, will not quit helping you find your justice. They are not going to quit. So you cannot quit. You got to be brave and stand up. Even though you are terrorized and you are fearful, it is so important for yourself and for your community to just be brave." She also said, "Timothy Iannone may have left me alive and breathing that day, but he took my life just the same. Iannone has been found guilty of his crimes against Michelle, and he was sentenced on December 13, 2022 to 433 months for the indecent assault and 151 months for kidnapping to be served consecutively, totaling 48.6 years. A sentence that likely will be for the rest of Iannone's life, as he was already 61 years old at the time of his sentencing. Allison Foy's daughter, Courtney Jackson Hicks, attended Iannone's sentencing in support of the victim. She said, "Listening to the testimony, there are a lot of similarities that I have noticed, and it took the victim 26 years to get the justice that she has very much deserved. And we have been waiting 16 years for ours. And I really hope that if anybody has any information, that I encourage them to come forward, because we would like our own day in court as well. And this definitely gives me some hope in that. Anyone with information regarding the Allison Foy or Angela Rothen cases should contact the Wilmington Police Department at 91034333620. Between 2002 and 2004, 3 women had been abducted in Cleveland, Ohio, by a man they thought they knew. He abused and tortured them and used them for his own pleasures. Michelle Knight had known unimaginable hardship her whole life. She had survived indecent abuse by a male relative, life on the streets, hunger, and many more traumas. At the age of 18, Michelle got pregnant and gave birth to her son, Joey. She wanted to be the best mom for him, but it was difficult because she did not have a lot of money. In the spring of 2002, her mother's boyfriend got drunk and fractured Joey's knee. Social services eventually came and put Joey in foster care. Michelle was desperate to get her son back, and on August 23rd, she was on her way to a custody hearing when she got lost. She stopped at a store to ask for directions as she was running out of time to get to the meeting. Then, a man offered to help her. She recognized him as the father of one of her friends. He said, I know where it is at. I can take you straight to it. It will only take me 5 minutes." And Michelle agreed, as it was enough time for her to get there. The man she trusted to help her was Ariel Castro, but instead of going to family court, he took her to his home, on the pretense of first picking up his daughter and showing Michelle some puppies. But his daughter did not live with him, and there were no puppies. That was the last time 21-year-old Michelle was seen. Michelle's life was difficult even before her kidnapping. Michelle was not officially registered as missing at the Ohio Police Missing Persons website because her family believed that she had probably left on her own, as she was angry that her son was removed from her custody. Her disappearance did not attract much attention in the local media because she was an adult. Castro ended up holding her captive in his house. The day he took her captive, he told her, "You are not going to leave for a long time." And then he started undressing himself. Michelle dropped to the floor, begging him to let her go. Begging him, saying, "I need to get to my son. This cannot happen." Castro ripped up her son's picture right in front of her and said, "You will never see him." At first, Michelle was kept bound with an extension cord wrapped around her legs, arms, and neck. He shoved a sock in her mouth to muffle her screams. Castro indecently assaulted her multiple times a day. He used loud music to further mute her cries. She said, "It was difficult. I had to go blank. Anytime he was doing anything to me, I had to put myself in a different place." During Michelle's captivity, she had been impregnated by Castro 5 times, but he did not allow her to have one of the babies. He would beat her so badly that she miscarried each time. He would beat her with dumbbells, punch her, and slam her against walls. He also starved her. At one point during her captivity, Michelle had a pet dog, but Castro snapped its neck after it bit him while he was trying to protect Michelle from Castro. During her captivity, there were long stretches where she was chained to a pole and left alone in the dark basement. Almost a year later, Castro kidnapped his next victim. On April 21st, 2003, just a day before her 17th birthday, Amanda Berry got up and got ready for work. She was thinking of not going into work that day because of her birthday the next day, but she decided to go. While she was walking home from her job at Burger King, a vehicle started to follow her down the street, and the man inside asked her if she needed a ride home. Amanda knew the man as Ariel Castro. He was the father of a friend and classmate from middle school, and he was an elementary school bus driver. He asked if she wanted to see her friend, that he said was at his house, to which Amanda agreed. Castro lied. His daughter was living in another neighborhood with her mother, Castro's ex. After they entered the white 2-story house on Seymour Avenue, Castro told Amanda that his daughter might be busy taking a bath. Castro said, "We will just wait." And he started showing Amanda around the house. Castro took her upstairs and showed her something strange. A mystery woman was sleeping in a bedroom in front of a television set. She later learned that the woman was Michelle Knight. Castro took Amanda to the next bedroom. She remembers the room was just really dark and he did not turn on the lights, and there was a little room off of the bigger bedroom, kind of like a big closet. He took her inside the smaller room and instructed her to pull down her pants. That's when she knew this was not going to be good. She became Castro's second prisoner. Amanda said, "He took me to the basement and he taped my wrists and he taped my ankles and he put on a belt around my ankles over the tape. He put a helmet over my head and he said, 'Just be quiet and do not make any noise, and I will take you home.'" Amanda said Castro chained her to a pole, shut off the lights, and left her in the dark with a television on. She said, "I just started screaming and crying. Somebody please help me, And nobody came. I was so scared that I was going to lose my life. I did not think that I was going to ever make it home." As her abduction made headlines, Amanda watched her mother and sister on the TV in the basement. She said that gave her hope and kept her going. She remembers thinking, "You know what? I am going to make it home to you. As long as you fight, I am going to fight." On the 4th day of her abduction, Castro moved her to an upstairs bedroom and chained her to a radiator with a chain around her stomach. After being missing for 1 week, Castro made a late-night phone call using Amanda's phone to her family and taunted them. He said, "I have Mandy," a nickname only the people that knew her called her. "She wants to be with me." In 2003, the FBI was just starting to develop technology that could track a cell phone's location if it was turned on. With that information, they were able to narrow down that her phone had been used within a 30 to 40 block area. FBI agent Tim Kalanick said, "We spent about a week around the clock in that area, hoping that this phone would be used again." But Castro never used Amanda's phone again. Meanwhile, Amanda's dark and filthy room at Castro's house was about the size of a closet. She recalls, "The mattress was old and nasty, and it was just disgusting. And we had the bucket to use the bathroom, and that smelled horrible." Castro gave Amanda a bag of chips or crackers for food to eat, but everything he gave her came at a price, including her weekly shower. She had to take a shower with him. Amanda said she had to numb herself to cope with the indecent abuse. She said, "You put your mind somewhere else so that you are not there. You are not in that room with him." In her diary, which was old notebooks, napkins, or takeaway bags, she used a code, a number at the top of the page, to keep record of how many times he indecently assaulted her each day, hoping one day he would be caught and that the police would know what he did to her and that he will be punished. Amanda said, "There was plenty of times when I just never knew, why is he keeping me here? I did not know if one day we were going to be slain or he wanted more girls in the house. What was he going to do to us?" Almost a year after Amanda became his prisoner, Castro went on the prowl again, just 5 blocks away from the street where he kidnapped her. 14-year-old Gina DeJesus was close friends with Castro's daughter, Arlene. Castro was also friends with Gina's dad. On April 2nd, 2004, the day she was kidnapped, Gina and Arlene were heading home from school. The girls called Arlene's mother to ask if they could have a sleepover at Gina's house, but she said no, and the girls went their separate ways. As Gina was continuing her way home, a maroon vehicle pulled up on the curb with Arlene's father at the wheel. He asked her if she had seen his daughter, to which Gina said yes. Arlene was right around the corner. Castro asked her if she could help him find her, to which Gina agreed. But instead of helping him look for his daughter, Castro drove Gina to his house, where he asked her for help moving a stereo. Once Gina was inside, she was unnerved by his bizarre behavior. Gina said he started fixing his eyebrows and trimming his mustache and cutting his nose hairs. Then he started to touch her and stuff. Gina asked him, "What are you doing? You could go to jail." To which he responded, "Well, okay, you are going to go home now, but you cannot go through the same door you came in." Castro led Gina to his basement, where she said he grabbed her and chained her up. Gina said, "He did not make it tight enough, so I threw it over, and then I tried to run, but he sat on my back. And then I just started kicking him. I kicked him and I bruised him really bad." As Castro overpowered her, Gina screamed for help. But the radio in his basement and the radio in the living room were too loud for anybody to hear. Gina said the first time Castro indecently assaulted her was on May 7th, 2004. Though she remembers the exact date, she was not comfortable discussing the details of what happened. At first, Gina was Castro's new favorite. He seemed to treat her better than the other girls. She also had the nicer room. Amanda said the slight gestures of favoritism made the girls feel jealous. It was just simple things, but when you do not have anything, you are like, well, why do I not have that? I want that. At first, Castro took special care to keep the girls divided and did not permit them to talk. He was always there watching their every move. It was like he knew everything that they did. One of the meals he made for them was hot dogs, rice, and eggs, all cooked in bacon grease, and all served together in a bowl. The girls were occasionally allowed out of their rooms to do chores, but had to obey stringent rules like only using a tiny drop of dish soap for the dishes and putting the pan in the center of the stove. The black and white television was their only window to the outside world. Amanda said she would watch the Montel Williams show featuring psychic Sylvia Brown. desperately wishing her mother would appear on the program so Sylvia could tell her mom that she was alive and okay. In 2004, Amanda's mother, Luana Miller, did go on the show. Sylvia told her, "I am sorry. She is not alive." Amanda said she broke down crying because she could not believe she said that, and then her mom broke down crying. Even though Amanda's mother was told she was no longer alive, she never stopped looking for Amanda. That was until 2006, when her mother passed away in March of heart failure, 3 years after Amanda disappeared. She never got the chance to see her daughter freed. On her 20th birthday, April 22, 2006, Amanda realized that she might be pregnant. This terrified her as she barely ate, and she was chained to a wall and had to use a bucket for a bathroom. She gave birth later that year on Christmas. Michelle said that while Castro refused to let her give birth, he made her help Amanda deliver a daughter into an inflatable kiddie pool. The baby was not breathing at first, and Castro threatened to end Amanda's life if the baby did not make it. So, she performed CPR on the infant, who revived and was named Jocelyn. Amanda had mixed emotions about the baby. She said, "This is his kid, you know. How do I feel about that?" And she resembled him a lot, and I would look at her and I just felt like, she is mine. She is mine. Gina said that having the little girl there with them was a welcome distraction. She said, "It was fun because I can get away from the situation. When I was playing with Jocelyn, Jocelyn made me forget everything." Jocelyn saw the chains on her mother, which Amanda said Castro instructed her to call bracelets. When Jocelyn was about 2, almost 3 years old, Castro took the chains off of her. As Jocelyn grew older, Castro allowed her freedoms that Amanda, Gina, and Michelle were not given. Though she was locked in with the 3 of them whenever Castro left the house, Jocelyn occasionally was allowed to go outside in the backyard, to the park, or to Sunday services with her father. Castro's love for Jocelyn seemed to turn him into a different man with her. Amanda said, "She loved him, and he loved her. She was always nervous and worried if he would touch her, or think about touching her because of his problems." On May 6, 2013, the women finally had a chance to escape. Jocelyn went downstairs and came running back up saying, "I do not find Daddy. Daddy's nowhere around." Amanda said her heart started pounding as she thought this was her chance to escape. If she was going to take that chance, it had to be now. For the first time in 10 years, Amanda said she found her bedroom door unlocked without Castro around. Downstairs, the front door was open but wired with an alarm. Beyond it, the storm door was padlocked shut, but Amanda was still able to squeeze out an arm. Gina said she thought Amanda had been caught by Castro and talked Michelle out of running to Amanda. Amanda said someone passing by outside saw her but did not intervene. That is when neighbor Charles Ramsey showed up. He tried pulling the door open but it was stuck. So he started kicking the door open and said, "There you go, finish kicking it out and you can get out." Once Amanda was out, she called for Jocelyn to crawl through the door. The 2 of them found a neighbor with a phone to call 911. Shortly after, the police arrived and rescued the other 2 women. Amanda said, "I was terrified, and just because there are people on the street does not mean that he would not hurt me. I was so terrified. I still do not know why he left that day with the door unlocked. I will never know." Gina remembered it took her a while to come out of her room because she did not believe the police were really there. "I thought maybe they were people in costumes because I was shocked." When Gina told the first responders her name, they looked like they had seen a ghost or something. Their faces completely dropped. The women finally made their escape after more than 9 years in captivity. Castro was arrested hours later. He was charged with 4 counts of kidnapping and 3 counts of indecent assault. Additional charges were reported to be pending, including for the intentional induction of miscarriages, assault, a charge for each instance of indecent assault, and a kidnapping charge for each day each captive was held. The women were taken to the hospital, where Michelle was found to be in the worst condition of the 3. They ran a bunch of tests on her to try and figure out what was causing her to bleed and why she was having stomach issues. They eventually told her she only has a few days left to live. Still, she refused to be defeated. Michelle remembered singing and dancing while receiving treatment. She was trying to make the best of her few days left. They put her on 14 different medications before she was actually better. Soon all of them were released from the hospital. During Castro's interrogations, he recalled each of the abductions in great detail and indicated that they were unplanned crimes of opportunity. He did not have an exit plan and believed that he would eventually be caught one day. Castro told the police that he treated the girls well and described the countless assaults he committed as consensual. He confirmed terminating Michelle's pregnancies, but claimed it was a mutual decision. He referred to himself as cold-blooded and an addict. The police found a note in the house in which he discussed the abductions and wrote that his money and possessions should be given to the kidnapped women if he were caught. Castro made his first court appearance at the Cleveland Municipal Court on May 9th, where bail was set at $8 million. The prosecutors intended to seek the end-of-life penalty against Castro. On August 1st, 2013, Castro was sentenced to life plus 1,000 years in prison after he pleaded guilty to 937 counts of kidnapping and assault. At his sentencing, Castro addressed the court for nearly 20 minutes, in which he claimed to be a good person. He claimed that he had never beaten or tortured the women and insisted that most of the intercourse he had with them was consensual. Castro blamed the FBI for failing to catch him, and he blamed his 3 victims for getting into a car with a stranger. He also said that he learned they were not virgins when he had intercourse with them for the first time. Castro said, "I hope they can find it in their hearts to forgive me because we had a lot of harmony going on in that home." Michelle also spoke at the sentencing. Addressing Castro, she said, "You took 11 years of my life away. I spent 11 years in hell. Now, your hell is just beginning. I will overcome all that has happened, but you will face hell for eternity. I will live on. You will lose a part of your life a little every day as you think of the 11 years of atrocities that you inflicted on us. I can forgive you, but I will never forget." Castro was born in Puerto Rico. He had 9 siblings. His parents got divorced when he was a child, and he moved to the U.S. with his mother and 3 of his siblings. They lived in Pennsylvania before they moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where his father and other relatives lived. Castro had a hard childhood. He was indecently and physically abused. While they lived in Puerto Rico, when Castro was 5, he was molested by one of their neighbors. He was also indecently assaulted by an uncle. His mother was also physically and verbally abusive towards him. When he was in junior high in Cleveland, he got suspended for touching a girl's breasts. When he was an adult, he met his girlfriend Grimilda Figueroa when they moved to the same neighborhood where she lived with her family. Castro and Grimilda moved to their own house at 2207 Seymour Avenue in Cleveland's Tremont neighborhood in 1992. This was the same house where he held the 3 women captives. Castro was abusive towards Grimilda. According to Grimilda's sister, Castro beat her, breaking her nose, ribs, and arms, which caused a blood clot on her brain that resulted in an inoperable tumor. He also threw her down a flight of stairs that fractured her skull. In 1993, Castro was arrested for domestic violence, but he was not indicted by a grand jury. 3 years later, Grimilda moved out, with the help of the police, and she took their 4 children with her. Castro was not happy about this, and the police had to detain him, but they did not press any charges. Even after Grimilda left him, he still continued to threaten and attack her. In 2012, Grimilda passed away due to complications from her brain tumor. Castro worked as a school bus driver until he was fired in 2012 for making bad judgments. These bad judgments included making illegal U-turns with toddlers and infants on his bus, using the bus to go grocery shopping, leaving a child on the bus while he went on his lunch break, and leaving the bus unattended while he took a nap at home. At the time of his arrest, Castro's home was in foreclosure after 3 years of not paying his real estate taxes. Castro's home at 2207 Seymour Avenue was demolished on August 7, 2013, as part of his plea bargain. About a month into his sentence, On September 3rd, the 53-year-old was found lifeless in his prison cell hanging from a bedsheet. He took his own life. Castro left a note with Bible passages that he wrote. It read, "If you confess, you will be saved, and God loves you, for all are sinners," as well as a note with the text, "Love my kids and grandkids." Since their escape, the three women have been dealing with everything that happened to them. Michelle, who changed her name to Lily Rose Lee, released 2 memoirs, Finding Me and Life After Darkness. She found the love of her life, Miguel Rodriguez, a medical courier, and they got married in May 2016. She has since traveled the globe as a public speaker and launched her foundation Lily's Ray of Hope, supporting women and girls who are victims of domestic violence, human trafficking, and child abuse. She partnered with specialty coffee maker 319 Co. to showcase her artwork and raise money for her foundation, which provides resources for women to restart their lives. She has also been involved with rescue animals. She and Miguel will never be able to have children of their own due to the abuse Castro inflicted on her, but they are looking into adopting. Amanda has turned her attention to spotlighting missing people in Northeast Ohio. She started hosting a daily news segment on Cleveland's Fox 8 because she wanted missing people to know the public was still looking for them. In April 2015, Amanda partnered with Gina, sharing their story in Hope, a memoir of survival in Cleveland, co-written with Mary Jordan and Kevin Sullivan. She is also raising her daughter Jocelyn, whom she is very proud of for the person she had become. Amanda has also found love, something she never thought would be possible. Gina has been quietly enjoying life with her family in the suburbs of Cleveland. She joined forces with the Northeast Ohio Amber Alert Committee. She plans to help survivors and their family members. In 2018, Gina launched the nonprofit Cleveland Family Center for Missing Children and Adults, also known as Cleveland Family, to help families left waiting after loved ones have been abducted. Gina and her family also travel around the country to train law enforcement on how to engage with the families of those missing. Gina said, "I want to help families because my family did not have anything. They did not get help. My parents did not have people actually helping them do the flyers and stuff. We could actually help other families with all of that instead of them worrying and freaking out." In June 1996, the body of an 18-year-old woman was discovered inside her Idaho Falls apartment. Despite the collection of DNA, the identity of the perpetrator would remain unknown for over 2 decades. Angie Ray Dodge was born on December 21, 1977, in Vancouver, Washington, to her parents Jack and Carol Dodge. As the youngest of 4 children and their only daughter, Angie held a special place in the family. She began her educational journey in San Diego, California, where she attended preschool, before her family eventually settled in Idaho Falls, Idaho. There, Angie continued her schooling and quickly became known not only for her academic abilities, but also for her willingness to help others. During high school, she spent time tutoring younger children in subjects like math and English, offering guidance and support to those who struggled, further highlighting her generous spirit. In 1995, Angie graduated from Idaho Falls High School with honors. Her academic excellence earned her a place at Idaho State University, where she enrolled shortly after graduation. In 1996, at just 18 years old, Angie had taken a significant step toward independence by moving into her first apartment in Idaho Falls. However, just 3 weeks after moving into her new apartment, something unexpected and deeply unsettling was about to unfold. On June 13th, Angie was assaulted and brutally stabbed to her end in that very apartment. When she failed to show up for work that morning, 2 of her co-workers became concerned and went to check on her. It was they who discovered her lifeless body and alerted the authorities. The Idaho Falls Police Department launched an investigation immediately, collecting evidence from the scene and interviewing people who had seen or interacted with Angie the night before. The investigators recovered male DNA and hairs from the crime scene and sent them for DNA analysis. Testing at the time revealed that the samples all belonged to a single, unidentified male. Based on witness accounts and tips, the authorities believed that more than one person might have been involved in the attack. Despite not matching the DNA found at the scene, 20-year-old Christopher Tapp became a suspect in January 1997. The investigators theorized that Christopher may have been part of a group that committed the crime, which kept him under scrutiny despite the lack of physical evidence linking him directly to Angie's case. Christopher was subjected to more than 100 hours of intense interrogation by the police. During these sessions, he eventually confessed to the crime, but his statements were riddled with inconsistencies and contradictions. No physical evidence ever connected him to the crime scene. Still, based on his confession, which had been obtained under significant pressure, he was convicted in May 1998 of aiding and abetting. He was sentenced to a minimum of 30 years in prison, despite ongoing concerns about the legitimacy of his confession. In 2001, Christopher formally recanted his confession, claiming that he had been coerced by investigators and that they had fed him details about the crime. In 2007, his case attracted the attention of the Idaho Innocence Project. A professor and an undergraduate student at Boise State University reviewed the case and examined the interrogation tapes. They concluded that Christopher had been heavily pressured and manipulated into making a false confession. Their findings added momentum to the growing doubts surrounding his conviction. An appeal was filed in March 2017, and as a result, the assault charge against him was dismissed. This reduced his sentence from 30 years to 20. Having already served 20 years by that time, Christopher was released from prison. The wrongful conviction had taken 2 decades of his life. Dozens of people were waiting outside the court. Christopher, who appeared taken aback by the applause received, gave a short statement on the courthouse steps. He said, "I want to prove to everybody that I can be something and do something right." He said the following about being released: "The world had changed. Cell phones ruled the world and there was no more physical talking between people." That really bothered me when I first got home. Plus, in my mind, I was still a 20-year-old kid, but all my friends had kids, mortgages, and car payments. They had real lives. In October 2020, he filed a lawsuit against the city of Idaho Falls for his wrongful imprisonment. In June 2022, the city reached a settlement agreement with him for $11.4 million, acknowledging the significant injustice he had endured. As part of the legal agreement reached with the Bonneville County prosecuting attorney, the charge of first-degree slaying remained on his record, while the assault charge was officially dismissed. For over 2 decades, Carla Dodge refused to let her daughter's case be forgotten. Driven by grief and determination, she took an active role in the search for the truth, working closely with investigators and independently pursuing leads to find the second perpetrator. Carol conducted her own research, reached out to forensic experts, and stayed in close contact with the authorities to ensure that Angie's case remained a priority. The Idaho Falls Police Department also maintained their commitment, reaching out over the years to various law enforcement agencies, the FBI, the Attorney General's office, and forensic specialists to identify the individual whose DNA had been left at the crime scene. In 2016, the Idaho Falls Police Department partnered with Francine Bardot and the West Jordan Police Department in Utah. The investigators hoped that using the MVAC forensic DNA collection system would help extract additional touch DNA from previously collected evidence. The following year, they sought help from Parabon Nanolabs. They generated trait predictions from the crime scene DNA, producing a digital composite image of what the suspect might have looked like at age 25. Based on traits like skin tone, eye and hair color, face shape, and freckling. In November 2018, Idaho Falls detectives intensified efforts with Parabon's newest advancements in DNA analysis. A short list of 6 individuals emerged through genealogical mapping. The investigators focused on the most promising lead, a man residing in Twin Falls. In February, a team was sent to covertly collect his DNA. They seized an opportunity when the man discarded chewing tobacco, which they hoped contained viable genetic material. Though testing was expedited, the results came back negative. His DNA did not match the profile left at the crime scene. Despite the setback, analysis of the DNA profile continued. Parabon's genetic genealogy work revealed that the Twin Falls subject was more distantly related to the true suspect than initially believed. Based on family tree positioning, it became unlikely that any of the remaining 5 men were the source of the crime scene DNA. Then, in a crucial breakthrough, Parabon researchers located an old obituary in a small library's digital archive. The document mentioned a woman whose daughter had been briefly married into the same family line, a connection that had previously gone unnoticed due to the lack of children from that union. However, further details in the obituary revealed that the woman had a son, Brian Lee Dripp Sr., from a different relationship, one that still carried the suspect's family DNA. Parabon and the investigators traced this 7th individual through extended genealogical investigation. They discovered that Dripps had lived in Idaho Falls in 1996, directly across the street from the Dodge family. In 2019, he was located in Caldwell, Idaho. The detectives collected DNA from a cigarette butt discarded from his vehicle, and the results revealed a conclusive genetic match to the DNA left at Angie's crime scene. Following his arrest, Dripps confessed during interrogation to both the assault and ending the life of Angie. He claimed that he had been heavily intoxicated on illegal substances and alcohol, and that he had intended only to assault her. Dripps insisted that he had acted alone. In February 2021, he pleaded guilty to the charges. At 55 years old, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 20 years. Carol, Angie's mother, reflected on her journey. She said, "My fight was to find my daughter justice. Every road I went down, somebody tried to put up a barricade or a roadblock. Everywhere I turned, somebody said, 'You cannot do this,' or 'You cannot do that.' I said, 'Just stand back and watch me do it.'" In April 1982, an 8-month-old girl vanished from her mother's arms during a violent altercation in Ohio, setting off a decades-long mystery. The last time Olisa Williams was seen alive was on April 29, 1982, when her father Isaiah Williams forcibly took her from the arms of her mother, Denise Frazier Daniel, during a violent encounter at a friend's home in Ohio. At the time, Denise had been staying with a friend to escape the repeated abuse she suffered at the hands of Isaiah. On the day Olisa disappeared, she responded to a knock at the door and found Isaiah standing outside. In her words, "He hit me in the face, and I fall back," and that was when he grabbed her and Olisa's crying. She recalled chasing after him in a panic before returning to the house and immediately calling the police. Although the officers quickly apprehended Isaiah, the child was not in his custody. During questioning, he gave vague and shifting explanations about Olisa's whereabouts. He reportedly told the officers that he had left the child with relatives unknown to Denise. His inconsistent statements and alleged claims of memory loss complicated the investigation, allowing him to avoid formal charges for many years. Despite being the primary person of interest from the outset, the authorities lacked the evidence to move forward with prosecution at the time. Throughout the years, Isaiah remained on the radar of investigators. His history of domestic violence against Denise was well documented. In a significant development, both his brother and one of his former wives came forward and informed the investigators that they had seen Olisa with Isaiah in early July of 1982. They noted that the child appeared to be in good health during those sightings. Another ex-wife of Isaiah provided crucial information. She told the police that she was with Isaiah during the early hours of July 10, 1982, when he placed the child into his car and drove away around 2 or 3 a.m. According to her account, he returned later that morning at approximately 11 a.m. without the child. She stated that he then loaded her belongings into his car and dropped her off at work. Furthermore, when she stayed overnight at his home again on July 22nd, she reportedly saw no sign of Olisa, suggesting the child had not been returned. In early 1983, Isaiah appeared in court for violating a restraining order. During that appearance, he claimed that while driving in the summer of 1982, he consumed alcohol and smoked marijuana before pulling over to sleep. When he awoke, he alleged that Olisa was gone and assumed Denise had taken her. Over the years, Isaiah made conflicting statements, at times telling Denise directly that he ended their child's life. while telling the investigators he had no recollection of the events, citing memory loss due to a car crash. The case eventually went cold, but was reopened almost 4 decades later in 2021. A renewed investigation by the Ann Arbor Police Department was done, though Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel's office did not reveal what new evidence was uncovered. They stated that the authorities believed Williams took Olisa's life as a means of exerting control over her mother. Williams had a violent past, including a conviction for assault with intent to commit great bodily harm after beating an ex-wife with an 8-foot board. He served 10 years in prison for that crime. In October 2021, 76-year-old Williams was finally charged. The charge was filed in Washtenaw County's 15th District Court. The road to trial was prolonged due to an extended extradition process, but by May 2023, Williams was officially bound over for trial in Washtenaw County. The long-awaited trial culminated on May 10, 2024, when a jury found Isaiah Williams guilty. Though Olisa's body was never recovered, the court determined that the evidence was sufficient to hold Williams accountable. In July, following the guilty verdict, Williams was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, closing one of Michigan's oldest cold cases. Olisa's mother, Denise, read a victim impact statement at the sentencing hearing. She told the court, "Isaiah's silence is a cruelty beyond measure. You have taken from me the most precious gift from God, and now you deny me the chance to lay her to rest. You may think that your silence will protect you, but it will only add to your guilt and shame. You may have taken my Olisa's life, but you will never take away my love for her, and I pray somehow I will be able to bring her home to rest." In November 1983, a motorist driving in Delray Beach, Florida, stumbled upon the horrifying sight of a lifeless body. For decades, no leads emerged, and the person responsible remained free. Carla Lowe was born in 1962. At 21 years old, she lived in Pompano Beach, located in Broward County, Florida. On November 13, 1983, Carla's life came to a tragic and violent end. Her lifeless body was discovered lying in the middle of Depot Avenue, near the Delray Beach Amtrak station. The scene was disturbing. Carla had been brutally beaten and then run over. It was clear that her demise had not been accidental. A man driving down Depot Avenue that early morning was the first to come across her body. What he thought might be debris in the road turned out to be far worse. Stunned and horrified, he quickly dialed 911 to report what he had found. The call was placed with urgency, and within minutes, the officers from the Delray Beach Police Department were dispatched to the scene. When the officers arrived, they confirmed the caller's worst fears. The young woman found on the road was declared deceased at the scene. Her identity was soon confirmed as Carla, a beloved member of her community. The police launched an investigation immediately. Crime scene specialists worked tirelessly, combing the area for any shred of evidence. Witnesses were questioned, nearby properties were canvassed, and every available lead was pursued. She was waiting for a train at the local Amtrak station when she was attacked, beaten to her end, and run over by a car. The police found her car, a 1963 Mercury Comet, in a field located just east of 1135 West Atlantic Avenue. Yet, as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the investigation yielded no clear answers. Despite the investigators' efforts, no arrests were made and the case went cold. In late 2021, nearly 4 decades after Carla's case was opened, Delray Beach's cold case unit revisited the long-dormant investigation. This renewed effort was made possible by advancements in forensic technology. Using the Foster plus Freeman Recover system, an advanced latent fingerprint development method, the investigators were able to retrieve fingerprint evidence that had not been recoverable back in 1983. The recovered fingerprints were submitted for analysis, and the results were both conclusive and chilling. They matched Ralph Williams, a man who had actually been questioned during the original investigation in 1983, but had never been charged. At the time, there had not been enough evidence to link him definitively to the crime. On the day she was found, He was taken into custody on grand theft auto and burglary charges, but they could not connect him to this case. Williams had been living in Jacksonville, Florida at the time of this forensic discovery. The investigators tracked him down, and the fingerprint evidence provided the missing link they had long needed. His connection to the crime scene was no longer speculative. It was scientifically confirmed. In November 2021, Williams was arrested in Jacksonville. He was charged in the first degree. The authorities wasted no time in beginning the legal process to ensure he would face those charges in the appropriate jurisdiction. He was quickly extradited from Jacksonville to Palm Beach County, where the original crime had taken place. Jackie Lowe Repass, Carla's sister, said the following of Williams' arrest: "It means everything to me. 38 years I have waited for this. He took a very beautiful person out of this world. There is a name now to who did this to my sister." Before his trial, in November 2022, Williams said that he was dissatisfied with his defense and sought to hire his own attorney. But he had a change of heart and accepted a plea that keeps him from serving any prison time. He was sentenced to 365 days in the county jail and 10 years of probation. 60-year-old Williams would then be released from jail after receiving credit for time served. Jackie said, "It is not justice. It is just not justice." Him being cocky the way he is, decided that he did not want to take the plea. Jackie said that she and the other family members did not really want a plea to begin with, but they understood it. She said, "It should be a first-degree charge. It was like it happened all over again." Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg said, "The guilty plea and sentence, while imperfect, hopefully provides a measure of justice for the family of victim Carla Lowe in this nearly 40-year-old cold case. I want to thank Prosecutor Alethea McRoberts and detectives from Delray Beach Police for the hard work that led to the conviction of Ralph Williams." Jackie said that her family will move forward with a lot of anger, but they accept the outcome. She said, "He still got a slap on the wrist." She added that she wants people to know that her late sister was a good and generous person. She said, "She just was not a piece of trash that someone threw away." In September 1977, a speeding driver crashed a stolen car off a rural highway near Delafield, Wisconsin. The man was ejected and lost his life instantly. With no identification, his identity remained a mystery for over 4 decades. On September 14, 1977, in the early hours of the morning, a deputy from the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department attempted to stop a speeding vehicle. The driver ignored a stop sign, lost control of the car, and veered off the highway. The crash proved fatal as the driver, who was the only person in the vehicle, was ejected. The scene of the accident was located 7.5 miles east of Delafield, Wisconsin. Following the crash, the investigators identified that the vehicle had been reported stolen from Gurnee, Illinois. This added a layer of complexity to the case, suggesting potential criminal intent or behavior associated with the vehicle's final journey. Despite efforts to uncover more about the incident, there was little to directly connect the driver to any established identity at the time. The autopsy conducted by a forensic pathologist revealed that the deceased was a white male, estimated to be between 20 and 30 years old. He measured 6 feet tall, weighed approximately 155 pounds, and had brown hair cut in a military style. These physical characteristics provided a general profile, but were not enough to make an immediate identification. Among the items recovered from the vehicle was an object bearing the name John. While investigators were able to confirm that the name did not match the registered owner of the stolen vehicle, they could not determine whether it belonged to the deceased, was an alias, or was completely unrelated. The mystery surrounding the driver's identity persisted for decades. In October 2019, the long unsolved case of the unidentified man, known as Delafield John Doe 1977, was reopened by a deputy medical examiner. The case was referred to the DNA Doe Project. A DNA sample was successfully sequenced, creating a viable genetic profile that could be uploaded to public DNA databases such as GED Match and Family Tree DNA. By mid-2020, genealogists from the DDP began the challenging task of constructing a family tree using the genetic data. The process proved to be complex and time-consuming, involving extensive research and analysis. Despite the difficulties, the team was able to provide the medical examiner with some initial insights, including potential surnames linked to the unidentified man's genetic matches. One of the crucial breakthroughs came when a marriage record was discovered. This document led the medical examiner to a specific individual who closely matched the profile they had been working to identify. In November 2021, this lead pointed to John Lindberg Scott, and to confirm the theory, DNA was obtained from his sister, Jean Nunn. The comparison yielded a conclusive match. John, born on May 6, 1950, was originally from Bristol, Tennessee. At the time of his demise, he was 27 years old. John faced personal difficulties that led to a growing distance between him and his family. These struggles, though unspecified, appeared to push him toward a solitary existence. As time went on, his disconnection from familial ties deepened, and he became increasingly isolated. This emotional and social withdrawal may have played a part in his eventual descent into minor criminal activity. The medical examiner stated, "John's case has touched so many lives over the decades, and it is such a blessing to be able to finally give him his name back and offer his family some answers as to where he has been all these years." Reflecting on the journey to bring John home, the medical examiner added, "Words cannot express how honored I am to restore his rightful name to him and work on returning him to his sister, where he belongs." In Kansas City, Missouri, a 16-year-old teen was indecently assaulted and strangled in a place where she was supposed to be safe. Her case took more than 3 decades to be solved, and it was the first case solved by the Kansas City Police Department using advanced genetic genealogy techniques. On July 26, 1989, 16-year-old Fawn Marie Cox had worked at Worlds of Fun until 11 p.m. and then came home and went straight to bed, knowing she had to work the next day. Her life was ended in the bedroom of her home at 9th and Van Brunt Street while the rest of the family was asleep in the home. Someone climbed up and broke into her window, indecently assaulted her and strangled her till she lost her life. Fawn's body was discovered by her mother and little sister when Fawn's alarm went off the next morning, and they went to turn it off because Fawn was not getting up. No one in the family heard anything that night because the air conditioner units were running. But her sister remembers that the family dog was agitated. The dog was pregnant, and they thought it had something to do with the pregnancy. Initially, 2 teenage suspects were charged in the case, but the key witness recanted and admitted to being untruthful, so the charges against the juveniles were dropped. In 1989, those detectives did not realize how valuable some of the evidence the crime scene investigators collected would become. CSI collected bodily fluids from a potential suspect. At the time, all they could do was attempt to compare blood types. The family said that what happened to Fawn haunted them, and the lack of answers was painful. As technology evolved over the years, KCPD's Missing Persons Cold Case section re-examined the case. They determined the initial investigation had left no stone unturned, and only science would solve Fawn's case. In the first decade of the 2000s, KCPD Crime Lab scientists developed a suspect DNA profile from the bodily fluids that were collected and stored in 1989. They uploaded this to the National CODIS database. There was no match. As the years went on, the KCPD detectives continued to meet with Fawn's family and explore any possible leads. In the summer of 2020, Operation Legend came to Kansas City, bringing federal resources into the department, focused on solving violent crimes. This helped the department overcome those financial barriers to perform the test. The case has haunted the Kansas City Police Department members for more than 30 years. Captain Ben Caldwell said, "This one touched a lot of people because she was an innocent child whose life was ended in her own bed. It rattled detectives and officers who worked it for decades." Captain Caldwell said, running down every lead, "The initial detectives worked the case into the ground. Using the genealogical DNA results, the detectives found their suspect more than 30 years later. The results revealed her perpetrator to be Donald Cox Jr., her cousin. He passed away in 2006 under suspicious circumstances. His demise was later determined not to have been the result of foul play, but because of an overdose. Nonetheless, the medical examiner had investigated his end and retained a blood sample from the investigation. Crime lab staff extracted the DNA from that blood sample and compared it to the DNA profile from the bodily fluid recovered at the original crime scene in 1989. It was a match. Caldwell said, "To pick that home and that window to come in undetected and leave undetected makes sense, since the suspect knew Fawn." Fawn's family was informed of the news by the detectives on November 10, 2020. Her parents were sad but relieved to finally have answers. They said they had sometimes wondered whether the cousin had been responsible. A woman was brutally attacked in an old shack. She ended up losing her life. Her brother dedicated his whole life to finding her perpetrator. Diane Maxwell was a 25-year-old single mother with a 4-year-old son. She worked as a telephone operator at the Southwestern Bell Company in Houston, Texas. On December 14, 1969, she arrived at work for her shift just before 1 p.m. in her red Ford Mustang. She parked the car in the company parking lot, but she never made her way into the office. At around 1:30, a homeless man named Willie Bell saw a young black male with an afro exit an old shack that was near the lot where Diane had parked. Willie observed that the man was acting suspiciously, so he decided to go have a look at the shack. He was shocked to discover a woman with her hands tied behind her back. She asked him to help her, but he refused. The police had not always been kind to Willie. He was scared he would be the one to blame. He ran away and rather called the police. Unfortunately, by the time the police arrived, the woman had passed away. She had a stab wound just above her navel. The woman was identified as Diane Maxwell. An autopsy showed that the wound was only an inch long, but an artery had been severed which caused her to bleed out. She had also been indecently assaulted and strangled. The shack was used as a storage shed for a nearby gas station. Inside, the investigators found a rumpled pink blanket and a man's gray suit coat among service manuals and old oil cans. Diane's purse was there, but her money and car keys had been taken. 9 hours later, the police found her car about a mile away. The next day, the investigators dusted the car for fingerprints and they found several, as well as a right palm print, which they believe was left by the perpetrator when he closed the car door. In 1969, fingerprint matching was still done manually, and Houston had 500,000 records on file, so the investigators were unable to do a thorough search. The prints were matched against every newly arrested person, and every lead was followed, but the case went cold. Diane's younger brother, David Maxwell, was only 20 years old when his sister's life was taken. Her unexpected and horrific demise left his 4-year-old nephew motherless. He took in his nephew, as he promised his sister he would, if anything were to happen to her, and made it his mission to help find her perpetrator. To that end, David pursued a career in law enforcement, rising through the ranks over the coming years. At age 37, he was accepted into the oldest law enforcement group in the nation, the Texas Rangers, an elite group with only 134 members at the time. By this time, Houston had implemented one of the first automated fingerprint identification systems. He submitted a search on the latent prints lifted from his sister's car 17 years earlier, but there was still no match. Another 17 years passed without any progress. Diane and David's father was almost 90 years old, and he begged David to track down Diane's perpetrator before he is no longer alive. David enlisted the help of his friend Jim Ramsey, a detective with the Houston police. When they went to the evidence room to get the clothing that had been recovered from the crime scene, they learned it had been thrown away, as had the photos and other evidence collected at the time. Then they discovered that the fingerprint evidence was missing from the case file, presumably having been misfiled. After months of physically searching through cold case files, they finally found the missing prints. By this time, it was 2003, and the technology for matching prints was much more advanced. The FBI's Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, AFIS, had been online for 4 years. Detective Ramsey first ran the prints through the Texas AFIS, but there were no hits. He then ran the prints through the FBI's EAFIS, and 20 potential hits were returned. All 20 hits were then examined visually by fingerprint experts. One stood out, and it matched a 58-year-old man named James Ray Davis, a career criminal. There were 4 matches: right index, right middle, right ring, and then right palm, from when Davis had closed the door to the Mustang. While Davis had spent most of his life in prison for other crimes, he was currently living along the Texas and Arkansas border. He had just finished a prison term 9 days before the crime against Diane happened. Detective Ramsey knocked on his door and interviewed him. Davis initially denied any involvement, but when he learned about the fingerprint evidence, he confessed. He pled guilty in court, and on November 24, 2003, 34 years after the crime, James Ray Davis was sentenced to life in prison. David was finally able to make good on his promise to solve his sister's case, and their father was able to rest easier. Davis passed away in prison a few years after being convicted in 2007. A son's promise to his parents on their funeral has finally been fulfilled after nearly 30 years of unanswered questions. The elderly couple that was found lifeless in a wooded area in Washington on Christmas Eve in 1985 finally has justice for the horrible crime that was committed against them. 83-year-old Wilhelmina Minnie Maurin and 81-year-old Edward Ed Maurin were an elderly couple living in Ethel, Washington. The couple ran a Christmas tree farm, and they were very well known in the Ethel community. On December 19, 1985, Minnie was planning on hosting a ladies' church luncheon at her home. When the guests arrived for the luncheon, there was no one home to answer the door, and the door was locked, something that was strange as the Maurins always left their door open. The guests started to make phone calls to see if anyone had any idea where the couple was. When they eventually gained access into their home, they could see clear signs of a disturbance. Drawers had been left open, papers were thrown around, and boxes of bank statements were on the floor. The police were called immediately, and an investigation was launched. Some of the things the police noticed is that there were no signs of forced entry. Minnie's purse was hidden behind the couch under a newspaper, and the blinds behind the Christmas tree were closed. This led the police to theorize that they had been kidnapped. Being Christmas tree farmers, they would never have the blinds behind their Christmas tree closed during this time of year, and according to friends and family, Minnie would never leave her home without her purse. Not only did the Maurins have a successful Christmas tree business, but their son Dennis had one of the largest logging companies in the Pacific Northwest. This led the detectives to think that money had something to do with their disappearance. The next day, witnesses reported seeing their car at the mall parking lot. When the police went to investigate, they found a large amount of bloodstains inside the car, and the keys were still in the ignition. They also found shotgun pellets throughout the car. With the amount of blood that was found inside the car, the authorities believed that at least one of the victims lost their lives inside the car. 5 days after the couple's disappearance, on December 24th, their bodies were found in a wooded area at the end of a road in Chehalis. The autopsy showed that they had been shot inside their car with a shotgun and was then dragged to a wooded location where they were found by a passerby. The autopsy also revealed that Ed had experienced head trauma, indicating that he had been beaten prior to his end. There were drag marks from the side of the road to the spot the bodies were found. The perpetrators had not made a serious attempt to hide the bodies. Their son Dennis said, "At their funeral, I laid my hand on their casket and I said, I will find out who did this." In 1985, DNA testing was not an option, and there were no fingerprints found in the car, so there was very little to work with. The police did, however, find a receipt from a bank in Ed's pocket and decided to follow that lead. They spoke to a woman who worked at the bank and was there when Ed made the withdrawal. She explained that on December 19th at 9:30 a.m., Ed called her and said that he needed to make a withdrawal of $8,500. When he showed up to the bank, his withdrawal was not ready for him, so he told the teller that he would just wait in the car. Once it was ready and the teller went outside to give him the money, Ed quickly got out of the car and met her halfway, not allowing her to get too close to the car. The bank employee mentioned that he did not seem like he was in trouble, but she did notice there were other people in the car. By January, the police were working on improving the composite sketches to identify the man that was spotted in the Yardbird Mall parking lot. Even though he looked nothing like the sketch, there was suspicion that Mike Hattler, the Maurin's grandson, might have had something to do with it. He had a short temper and was no stranger to the law. When questioned about it, Mike became furious that he was being accused of harming his own grandparents and agreed to take a polygraph test, which he passed. Since immediate family was ruled out, the cops had to broaden their investigation to people who knew the Maurins. They started looking at the seasonal workers who were employed on the Christmas tree farm. This part of the investigation led to an end, since each of the workers had an alibi for the time of the crimes. Years later, in 1990, the police received a call from a man who claimed that his brother was involved in the crime. The caller claimed that this man took the lives of his wife's grandparents and stole their life savings. This person was their number one suspect, and a unique plan was hatched to confiscate this suspect. Two detectives posed as mobsters that wanted to recruit him and had a meeting arranged with the suspect. They said they heard he was responsible for a double crime and that he needs to confirm this if he wanted to be in the mob. The suspect quickly told them a story that matched the story of the Maurin couple perfectly, except for one important detail. In this story, the suspect shoots an elderly couple with a .22 Magnum instead of the shotgun that was actually used in the crime. There continued to be more inaccuracies in his story, and the detectives soon realized that he was just using the incident to gain street cred. By 1992, there were many tips that pointed to new suspects. Rick and John Rife were violent illegal substance dealers from the neighboring town. But despite so many tips pointing to the Rife brothers as suspects, arrests could not be made due to a lack of evidence. There was no weapon, no connection between the Rifes and the Maurins, and not enough credible witnesses. From the outset, the detectives harbored suspicions regarding their involvement in the case, as they were reportedly spotted near the Maurins' residence during the week of the incident. Another obstacle in the case was that the brothers relocated to Alaska in 1987, which shielded them from thorough questioning or investigation. In 2002, a renewed interest in the case emerged when Minnie's son offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the apprehension of his mother and stepfather's perpetrator. This incentive sparked a flurry of tips, ultimately revealing crucial clues. By 2012, additional witnesses and evidence emerged, pointing again to Rick and John. In the summer of that year, the detectives journeyed to King Salmon, Alaska, intending to make the arrests, only to discover that John had passed away a week prior. Nearly 3 decades after the crime happened, Rick Rife, then 53, was apprehended and extradited for prosecution. Throughout the trial, the witnesses testified that Rick and John had utilized a friend's shotgun and had openly boasted about the abduction and fatal shootings. The witnesses admitted to withholding information earlier due to fear of facing a similar fate. On November 18, 2013, Rife was convicted of 2 charges in the first degree, 2 charges of kidnapping and robbery, and 1 charge of first-degree burglary. Despite remaining silent during his court appearances, his attorney disclosed that Rife expressed neither apologies nor remorse, asserting that he was innocent of the crimes. He persisted in proclaiming his innocence through an appeal, but it was ultimately denied by a judge 2 years later. He is currently serving a sentence of nearly 103 years in prison. Additionally, in 2014, Rife received an extra 6-year sentence for the indecent abuse of a 10-year-old girl in the 1980s. The Maurin's son Dennis said, "It has been 26 years and 7 months. I thought about it at least 3 or 4 times a day. Closure will never come, but at least the guilty one was caught." In the quiet suburban town of Linwood, Washington, the autumn of 1979 was forever marked by a chilling discovery when a woman was found fatally shot in her home. An unusual lead, a queen of hearts and a deck of cards, helped solve the cold case after 32 years. On October 22, 1979, the body of 24-year-old Susan Schwarz was found in her Linwood home, a victim of a brutal crime. Her hands were tied behind her back, and she had suffered a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Items were also missing from the home, pointing towards a burglary. The crime scene yielded no significant evidence, no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, and no immediate suspects. The investigation quickly hit an end, leaving Susan's family and friends in a state of grief and confusion. For 32 years, the case remained cold. The breakthrough in Susan's case came from an unexpected source: a deck of playing cards. In an innovative move to solve cold cases, the Washington Department of Corrections had distributed decks of playing cards to inmates, each card featuring details of an unsolved crime. Susan was featured as the Queen of Hearts, and when her perpetrator's half-brother, who was set on revenge, saw Susan's face, he was ready to talk. In 2011, prison inmate Sherwood Cave Knight recognized the case from the playing cards and came forward with crucial information about his half-brother, Greg Johnson. The tip led investigators to a former girlfriend of the suspects, who told the investigators that she was there on the night of the crime and witnessed the suspect shoot Susan. The girlfriend also gave the investigators independent details of the crime scene and residents that matched the case. Approximately 2 weeks prior to Susan's end, Susan's best friend had returned to Washington and had spent a lot of time with Susan. The friend was going through a breakup and was deciding whether she wanted to get back together with her ex, who was the suspect. The friend told the investigators that Susan had urged her to leave the suspect because she did not like him. She also told the police that she left the suspect because he was violent, had been involved in an armed robbery, and had a girlfriend. When contacted, the suspect told the investigators that he was fishing in Everett on the day of the crime, but his statement could not be fully confirmed. In 1986, the detectives went to talk with the suspect in prison, where he was serving time for armed robbery. His brother was also serving time for a crime that was similar to Susan's. The Seattle man told the investigators during an interview that he dropped off his brother and 2 other unidentified people for a burglary, and that his brother later admitted to ending Susan's life. 57-year-old Johnson was arrested on April 22, 2011 at his Seattle home and was later charged. He was 26 years old at the time of the crime. His girlfriend at the time did not come forward as she feared for her and her family's safety. She recalled the 1979 crime when Johnson grabbed a pretty young woman out of the shower, tied her up, and put a bullet in her head. When Johnson looked up, she was standing there, and he shot Susan again. She recalls Johnson saying, with the gun still gripped in his hand, "It is that easy. This is what happens to people who expletive with my life." The teen had already felt the rage of his fists. The threats he made against her family pounded any courage out of her. She would be to blame if they got hurt. Fear bought her silence. Johnson's bail was originally set at $1 million, but they increased it to $5 million during a hearing on April 25th. He has an extensive criminal history, including multiple robbery and illegal substance convictions. The Seattle ex-con, then 58, pleaded guilty in January 2012, finally admitting that he was responsible. A Snohomish County judge sentenced Johnson on March 23, 2012, to a minimum of 24 years in prison. Susan's father, Henry Schwarz, said it was exhilarating to learn of an arrest after so many years, and he was eager to share the news with his son, Gary. He said, "When she passed, I wrapped her memory in blankets and tried to forget it. Gary, he took it much harder. Those two were like peas in a pod.